limited inventory, high demand, all creating a very competitive market. Let me turn this off. Right? Everybody agree with that
Yes.
so far? So you are seeing, especially in the early listing period, you're having to coach your sellers through multiple offers. Of course, you're having to navigate with buyers on multiple offers. So this class is basically just going to go over some strategies on how to handle both sides, whether you're a listing agent receiving them or you're on the buying side knowing that there's multiple offers, okay? If there's any experiences that you've had, and of course you're sitting at home that you'd like to offer, we'd like to hear them. If it's worked for you, if it's outside the box thinking, anything you want to add, please feel free to speak up. We're gonna take this from the seller side first, okay? And there's really two ways I've seen it handled from the seller side, being a listing agent and knowing that there's multiple offers, okay? Now, first of all, if we have a variable rate in your listing agreement, meaning you're writing the offer as well, you're gonna be a dual agent, and you know there's other buyers, you need to disclose that to the buyer's agent. Okay, if it's something, the conversation you've had with your seller, it's something we have in writing, saying, hey, we're listed at such and such, but if I bring the buyer, we're gonna reduce it to such and such. That's a variable rate, right? If you have that discussion, if we have that in writing with the seller and a multiple offer comes in, that should be disclosed. Now, what I didn't know in prepping for this class, and Michelle can speak up, is if we don't have that in writing, if we didn't have that conversation, but that happens anyway, as part of the seller negotiating with you, you don't have to disclose it.
It does not have to be disclosed, but if you've had any conversation whatsoever about that possibility, then you do need to disclose that.
But is that only if you're gonna do a reduction in commission, or if you're gonna bring a buyer potentially, period?
No, the seller's appointed agency covers bringing a buyer, the potential of bringing a buyer, and they're approving you having that in the possibility of doing
This is only if you're gonna be doing
only
less.
going to be a dual agency,
Yes.
and you're going to reduce the commission.
Right.
And this does happen, all right? If you've been here long enough and doing this, this does happen. Sometimes you talk about it as part of the agreement, and sometimes you don't, and you're sitting there with your offer, and the buyer and the seller might bring it up saying, well, you got both sides of this. If you reduce it to this, I'll go with your offer. One of them, you don't have to disclose. The seller brings it up as part of the conversation. If you've had this conversation as part of taking the listing, you have it in writing, it needs to be disclosed to the other agent. Okay?
On the MLS.
On the MLS. That way, and there is a variable rate part of your listing data, okay? So that way everybody's operating from the same playing field, under the same rules, all right? When multiple offers comes in and you're the listing agent, majority of the time you're going to tell all the other agents when you're getting in front of the seller, when can they expect a response, or when do they need to have their final and best in by, okay? Whether it's a couple hours, whether it's the next morning by 10 a.m., whatever it is, establish a deadline when you want all the offers in, highest and best, okay? You're going to review with the seller your highest and best normally, and we can all say it generally comes down to price. I think most of the time it does, but it doesn't always come down to price. There are other points in the offer that you need to review with your seller to figure out what's the best offer to take. For instance, wouldn't we consider a cash offer a little bit better than a conventional, and a heck of a lot better than maybe FHA or an NFC or a VA or some trickier financing where there's more stuff to get through? Wouldn't we say that? How about a flexible buyer? If your seller is moving into new construction that's not ready for 120 days, they don't have to move twice with this buyer, have to move twice with this buyer. Wouldn't that have some kind of monetary value? loans, money, the lender that you're familiar with that knows it's a high quality, high character lender versus a fly by night, file online, nationwide. I don't want to put any names out there, but you know, they're awfully quick, right? So I'm just saying, if you put them side by side, there's other things other than price, but generally it comes down to price. Now, the other way to play this, and we'll get this other kind of strategy, you don't see this happen too often. And I think whatever strategy you take, you should talk to your seller and see which one they like too. You shouldn't go rogue on strategy. Tell them what you think is the best way to handle it. This is normally how we handle it. This is the way I think you should handle it. But definitely, you know, talk with them about your strategy to make sure they're on board. Okay, you don't want to do anything out of pocket that they would feel should have been handled differently. But you can always go back to 1 or 2, 3 buyers and like, hey, this is where A buyer's at. Where do you want to be? You know, be okay. B buyers, this is where A and B's at. Where do you want to be? And you beat that. Okay, you're beating that. Going back to A. Hey, C came up here. This is where we're at. Highest and best. Can you beat? And you almost auction it. You know, you can do that as long as your seller is on board. You don't see people do that very often, but you certainly can.
I didn't know you could do that.
Yes, I didn't either until Nancy Hansen told me. I learned something new every day. But typically you're going to see the highest and best. Another point of the seller, appraisal. It's cash and they waive their appraisal versus conventional strong buyer, but I still have an appraisal. The price was inflated, so that might be an issue. You might have a strong buyer both getting financed, but one waives the appraisal saying, I have enough cash that if this doesn't appraise for $5,000 or $6,000, my buyer's willing to make up the difference. That's how strong we feel about this house. There are other points to the offer other than just money. You should also have an estimate of proceeds broken down for each scenario for the seller, so they can see, sort through all the minutia, sort through when all the smoke clears. This is your bottom line with A. This is your bottom line with B. This is your bottom line with C. Okay, that makes sense. We focus on the seller first because it's the easiest. It's the buying side, and you're in a great position with the seller. Everybody's happy. We got multiple offers. It's like picking, picking your favorite food, which one we want to eat tonight. So the buyers are much more difficult. The buyers are where we're losing, right? Is there anything else you want to add to the sellers, Michelle? You have some good input on this.
I don't know if you want to hit this with buyers, because it all intertwines so much. I don't know where we're going to hit it, but the seller and the listing agent does not have to tell you that there are multiple offers coming in. So that's not information that you're entitled to. That's up to the seller as to whether or not they share that there are multiple offers.
Right. Now, the reason behind that is because some buyers are adverse to competition. As soon as this is another thing about being a listing agent, do not feign interest. Do not feign that there's other offers coming in when there's not. Do not lie. Because of that, number one, don't lie. Number two, you could push off the only buyer you have trying to be slick and ruin it. And say, oh, okay, we're not competing. We're not going to compete for your house. Thanks, but no thanks. We're going to plan B. You could actually backfire on you, okay? And it often does, actually. You think you're going to get 2 offers in one buyer, and you really are getting 1 offer here. You tell that person thinking it's going to help, or you drive up offers, and that person says, no thanks. Now you're only working with 1 offer. So again, talk with your sellers until, tell them the scenario. This is what could happen. Generally, it drives prices up. We get multiple offers, but you could turn somebody away. What do you want to do?
Was that a surprise?
Interesting. Yeah.
And on the buy side, it's frustrating not knowing, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes.
But
you would almost feel like if you didn't know that, you were treated unfair that there wasn't another offer.
Right. So
it is up to you to ask. And I don't know that, like Michelle, even if that seller has instructed them not, then they probably will boldface lie to you. because they're being obedient, they're doing the fiduciary obligations
Yeah.
to their client.
So when you're using like the multiple offer addendum, do they have to show you the other offer? Like, is that the only time they actually have to show you what the, because you know when you say that you're gonna pay 1,000 over the highest.
That's the escalating clause.
Oh, okay.
We're gonna get to that. That's the escalation clause, and that can be that's usually work from the buying side, not the selling side. So
But in that situation, do they have to show you the other offer?
that's the way that they've written it. I mean, good question, do they have to? That's the way they agree to, if they agree to the escalation clause. Okay? The key, have to is an interesting word, because have to comes from some man or woman in a road, black one. We just try to negotiate what we have agreed to, but when it comes time to actually forcing someone to do something, we have limited power, limited, influence. So,
Going to do presenting offers.
no, I'm just trying to sit here. I do want to make sure that people understand that when you're presenting offers, getting them signed, sealed, and delivered is paramount. You don't really have a legally enforceable offer until it's signed, sealed, and delivered. And what that means is that all parties have agreed that their signatures are on the final agreement, and then those offers have been delivered to their respective representative for themselves, okay? So I say this because it will happen where you've presented an offer, a listing agent has countered your offer, you've accepted the counter, you probably even got your buyer's signatures on it, and you send it to the listing agent, and then all of a sudden, 8 hours later, 9 hours later, you don't have it back, and then there's another offer in play. And you're gonna be like, well, wait a second, your counter, we agreed, my signatures are on it. It doesn't matter. And you can get mad at the agent for delaying, or you can get the seller's signature right away, but don't get mad at the agent for having to present the other offer, if they're legally bound to. They have to, by law. Even if they would have signed, sealed, and delivered, and you have the offer back, and another offer comes in, just FYI, you are legally bound to present that to a seller. Now, you can only take it in a backup scenario, because you have a signed, sealed, legally enforceable offer on the first end. You can accept that backup offer subject to the first offer becoming null and void.
Okay.
But that's it at signed, sealed, and delivered stage. Okay? If it's not signed and sealed, delivered, you as a listing agent can call that buyer and say, listen, we are rescinding our counter. We are rescinding our agreement. There are multiple offers in play, and we'd like our highest and best by 9 o'clock tonight. You're going to make people upset. You're going to make that agent upset. That's not what we're in business to do. But first and foremost, we represent our clients. We don't, we try to play along, we try to get along, make every effort to do that. But at the end of the day, you have to represent your client, your principal. Okay, that's what we're legally obligated to do. All right? Let's go to the buyer strategies, because this is really where we're losing. We're on the list side, generally, multiple offers, we generally win. We're winning, right? Buyers, we lose. There's a lot of things in here we're going to talk about that, again, price primarily wins, but it's not all about price. Try to keep your offers as clean as possible when you're writing on multiple offer scenarios. When you have a bunch of stuff in there, closing costs, home warranty, appliances and stuff that are not being offered, furniture, I mean, you're going to lose. You can tell your buyers, like, you can ask what you want. There's multiple offers. The cleaner that we make this, the better chance we have of winning. The offer that you're putting through here, in my experience, you're going to lose. You won't even be considered if there's 2 or 3 more offers. And that's the real of it right now, is we're not competing sometimes against just one other offer. There's multiple offers, okay? First of all, call the listing agent and ask them, is there anything I need to know about your seller that you can tell me that would help me? You might find out that they have a new construction home that's not done in 90, 120 days. And here you have a buyer that's in a month-to-month lease. You know, that might be something, having that flexible buyer that just puts you over the top. You know, just a few $1,000s one way or the other might go to the flexible buyer, because now we don't have to move twice. For someone that has to be in 30 days or has to be in 45 days, right? And who knows what else they could tell you that might give you some kind of advantage when writing an offer, okay? Obviously, earnest money. That's the first thing I think of when we're coming down the purchase agreement. You know, get a $250,000 home and you come out with $500 earnest money, or, you know, come out strong. 1% should actually be what you new agents are starting with. Guys, you need to turn the market over. What we've been doing and practicing for so many years is just ridiculous. $150,000 home, $500, that's a joke. You know, you buy an offer $350,000, $400,000 home, come at them with $3,000, $4,000 earnest money. Get your buyer in the game too. But I would definitely look at that, and the earnest money to me says strength buyer.
I recently had an offer, and it was a $475,000 listing. They offered $500,000, and when we countered back, they countered back with the $3,000 we had asked for, but took their counter back $5,000. I've never seen that happen before. They gave us a $3,000, but subtracted $5,000 off the purchase price. Yeah, and she kept saying, and I was like, you know, it's a wash. You get this at closing. It's not like you're negotiating money you're losing here. And they wouldn't come up if we wanted more earnest money. I've never seen this happen before.
Most markets that I've talked to with agents outside, I think, you know, from even as close as Minneapolis, it's about a 1%.
Yeah.
When they found out that we had $300,000 home, except $1,000 earnest money on it, they were like, the agent on the other end was astonished. Like, you guys are kidding me. You know, the one we just sold for the 470, God bless this guy, he has a $10,000 earnest money. It was impressive.
Was that in a multiple offer situation?
No.
Did he come from another area?
Yeah.
He might have. I don't know him personally. He's with another broker.
Yeah.
He's been fantastic.
Where that's the norm, that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
I didn't understand why if we asked for 3, she went back 5. Even if she went back 3.
It almost seems like the agent, maybe, was it a newer agent that didn't understand how?
I don't think it was a newer agent. I think her wheelhouse was more $500 type of earnest money properties.
Yeah.
So buying it was like a 2-day negotiation just over earnest money.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would.
I get that first thing I look at if I'm looking at you from the buying side, earnest money. And then of course, financing is another thing. You know, I would think conventional is superior to FHA and VA, just from not having to sort through the things that FHA and VA require. But certainly from a buying standpoint, if you have to go FHA, you have to go VA, the home, you should know whether there going to be any problems. Is there peeling paint? Does the roof have more than 3 years life left on it? Look at the electrical panel, handrails. They're looking for insurance risk, right? Things like that. So if you have to take that strategy, reaffirm to the listing agent that you have looked this over. I don't see any. Do you see any issues? I got a good roof and the paint is solid and there's handrails. I think this is going to pass VA with flying colors. We're not going to have any issues. If you have to have FHA or VA, another strategy would be my buyer's willing to fix any FHA or VA problems up to a certain amount. Okay, it's $1,500. Maybe it's, you know, to calm that fear of that listing agent. Because sometimes you have FHA or VA buyer and you're competing and there's nothing you can do about it. It is what it is. It is 100% loan VA, you know. We're going to get into writing letters as a strategy, and we can play on the sympathies of the veteran, but we might have a shock for you in that regard, because it was a shock to me, me and Michelle were talking this through. So earnest money, financing terms, flexible closing, as is. I mean, obviously, having a property and waive their inspection is a way to make your offer a little bit better, but be careful with this. I don't think I would ever advise you to advise any buyer to waive their inspection rights. You know, if you're an investor and you're used to buying homes, maybe they do, and you tell them, hey, listen, I can never advise this as a professional. No, I know you can't, but we're going to do it anyway. I've had buyers that are that experienced with that. That's okay. that's okay. But, and if a buyer, once you tell them the dangers of, or at least the advantage of having an inspection, they're just like, no, I still would like to waive it, I want my offer accepted, then fine. You did your due diligence, you did your agency right by advising them. But it is unimaginable what can happen in a 10-day inspection period versus someone who's waiving, right? Cash, no appraisal, waive inspection, close when you want to close. That's gonna be hard to beat, even if there's more money on the table from a financing perspective. This one has less obstacles in the way if it's a cash deal, right? So that is one of them. Inspection time, having someone have 10 days versus 5 days. And I know we're in a busy market right now, you can't always get inspectors in really fast. But that is also something, if there's multiple offers, taking it off the market, you're gonna at least take it off through the inspection period. That's 10 business days, that's 2 full weeks versus a shorter time, one week, so you can get together, right? So that would be another point on the contract that you could make a little better.
And one thing with, you're seeing a lot of agents who are not taking the property off the market during the inspection period. The only thing you need to know, well, there's a couple things that you need to know. One, most purchase agreements say that it will be taken off the market when this is accepted. So that means, according to our MLS guidelines, that has to be updated in the MLS within 48 hours. So if it is something where you're going to leave it on the MLS, you need to have that in writing on the purchase agreement or on an addendum that it's going to stay on the market. The other piece of it is you have to inform any agent seeking cooperation, which means anyone who wants to show the house, you have to tell them that you have an accepted offer. You can't just let them go show it and then they call, we're writing an offer. Oh yeah, we're just waiting for the inspection to come back. How many of you have been in that?
Yeah, that's happened quite a bit.
Yeah.
Here's another thing, a lot of people are disclosing it on the remarks of the MLS, but not telling you when they approve your showing time. So take a minute to review the remarks and just make sure it doesn't say accepted offer, backup offers only through such and such date, because I've been guilty of that, not reading the remarks. They are disclosing on the MLS, but they're approving the showing and expecting you to see it. And you probably should, but it would have been nice to have a, hey, just FYI.
But showing time, you can also put remarks in too. So when that gets accepted, it automatically tells them to.
So one other thing that you can do here that you probably haven't thought of is waive the tax proration. It's pretty standard in our market here for the seller to pay what's current, but also prorate their share. Well, this could mean thousands and thousands of dollars. Now, your buyer wouldn't get the credit at closing, but generally when they go to sell the home, they're going to give that credit back anyway. So it ends up being a wash when you go to sell it. When you get the credit and you give the credit, it ends up being a wash. So it's just one way of saying you'd have to calculate every home to be different based on the taxes, but it might be, in some houses, it might be $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 swing, depending what time of year you're closing and the value of the home. So rather than jack up the price to where you're afraid it might not appraise, use $10,000 this way, keep the price low. Something to think about. Now, most people don't think of that strategy, but if you're competing against a lot of people and it's a nice home and prices are getting crazy as far as going back and forth, think about that as a way to go up in price and have the seller net more without the price going up.
Would you just add that in an addendum?
Yeah, it would be it would be an addendum. I mean, it obviously it says on the purchase agreement, seller will pay all taxes current and also pay their prorated share based on the date of possession. You would just put on an addendum, seller pay taxes current, buyer waiver. How would you word that? Seller.
I think you could almost cross it out on the purchase agreement and initial it.
Yeah,
I think you could.
Verbiage on that, but yeah, buyer waives, seller will not, and buyer agree that seller will not prorate the taxes.
You'll probably need to talk it through with the listing agent because, it's a strategy. Had anybody else even heard of it? I hadn't even heard of it when we were talking. I think it's genius.
Yeah. Very creative idea.
So, and then the last one is the inspection clause too. or excuse me, the escalation clause. You see a lot of people use this, and I'm gonna say this because I've heard this on the other side too, where listing agents are like, I don't like that.
Oh.
We're not using, I don't like this strategy. I mean, listen, whether or not the listing agent likes the strategy is irrelevant. It's the seller that the listing agent needs to present your offer to. So, I mean, it's a nice gauge because that listing agent is going to present that in a very negative way. But still, they need to present that. And how that escalation clause works is generally, you understand there's multiple offers. My buyer is going to offer $2,000 more than any competing offer with the cap price of this, provided that the seller prove the other offers, show the other offers. So what they're saying is, my buyer will, let's say the home's listed for $330,000, right? My buyer is going to pay up to $2,000 more than any other competing offer, up to $345, provided that the seller showed the competing offer. So if they come back and we're paying $345, then they would need to show me that someone was willing to pay $343 for it.
Why do you think that this rubs some listing agents so badly? Because it's gonna bring the seller the most for, top dollar for their house.
I don't know why they do that.
I almost think they don't. So I had a situation in Newton with an agent, and I just don't think he understood it. Really, I don't. Because he told me he just didn't think it was fair to the other agents. Had never heard of this.
And all those that are listening online, fair is not, it should be in our vocabulary. It's not about being fair. It's about your client. You're doing an escalation clause because your buyer wants this house is willing to pay up to this amount to do it. And basically what the buyer's saying, but I guess what the listing agent's probably saying is not fair is just because you're willing to pay that, you're not putting that out there. If in the same scenario we're listed at $330, if the next best offer is $335, you're saying you'll pay $337, but the listing agent's looking at it like, you just told me you're willing to pay $345, are you willing to pay I'm not going to get there in the way that you said. But it also, like you said, there's a lot of advantages to the seller, and we just need to present the offers. We can advise the seller at that point what their options are and what we think is their best options. That's what we're employed to do. But to have some kind of reaction the way someone wants to present an offer to use, I don't think that's our role.
Yeah.
So I don't coach everybody, I just coach you guys, and I hope we take this out of there because you'll be in both scenarios. You'll be a listing agent, you'll be a buyer's agent, you'll be competing, and you're gonna succeed this. So as long as you're working for your client and not your own interest and your own emotions, that's not what we're employed to do. That's not why they're employing us. All right.
I also think to your point that's who they're choosing to have them represent that. If their agent doesn't know that that's even an option, that's just their fault, or that's who they're choosing to work with.
Yeah, give it a chance to give it an education to it. It's like, I'm sorry, this rubs you the wrong way. We just really want this house. It's a blind offer.
Yeah.
We're willing to pay up to this amount for it if there's anybody that's even close to that.
Yeah.
If not, we'll pay more than anybody else up to this amount. I'm just trying to get my buy of the house, and hopefully it nets your seller more money. Hopefully it's a win-win for everybody. Try to reframe it for them if you can. Okay.
And seller can technically just counter back at the cap. They could just say, hey, we're not, we just want to make a straight counter offer. Do you want this house for $345? Regardless of what other offers come in. And then it's back to your buyer.
Right.
Then your buyer can decide, well, I was willing to do that. They made that assumption. Yeah, I want the house.
Now, here's a deal. When you're also asking for things, when we're in a multiple offer situation, don't ask for a bunch of stuff that you're not willing to give. If they're walking away with the washer and dryer, then don't ask for it. I mean, we need a washer and dryer. We're going to lose the house over a washer and dryer. Like, literally explain it to your buyer that we need to not put stuff in here that makes the seller sour on our offer, right? Subject to sales and subject to close. Now, if you have to have a sale go through to buy the house in a multiple offer situation, it's probable that the other ones are not subject to sale. So be prepared to lose. subject to closing. That's great that you have an offer accepted, but still it's another obstacle. You know, it's another, so I would really go heavy on price in that scenario. Maybe, you know, say, hey, we gotta take a chance of this because this is so good, we'll gamble on this sale going through. Also, provide information to that listing agent of that subject to close. If we're through inspection, we got inspection signed off on it, we got full commitment from the buyer, if we got a pre-approval from that sale that's from a reputable lender that shows they have money and that's good, send all that to that listing agent. Show them that this sale is locked down. If you're there, you know, if you're through inspection, show that it's signed off on. If it's a grade 3 approval or a pre-qualification, or hopefully maybe even have loan commitment, you're that far in, show that to them, okay? That's the only chance you have to like show them that deal is solid. Otherwise, that's an obstacle in their head that's not maybe not on those other purchase agreements. All right, but come strong in price. That's the way you're going to win that. Expiration dates. Keep in mind about signed, sealed, and delivered, okay? I mean, you know, I know we want to be first and we put quick turnaround times. I get why you do that, and it is important to try to get these offers delivered, signed off on, negotiated. You see a lot of listing agents that put something on right away saying, we're not even going to respond to an offer for 72 hours. You know, I don't know how I feel about that. But definitely if that's, and then that goes the wrong way too. So like they'll say that we're not responding to offer 72 hours, all of a sudden something ultra strong comes in, and next thing you know they're under contract in 24 hours, and you as the buying agent thought you had another 48 hours on your buy. So I've seen that happen too. That's happened to me.
And the legal part of that is if that's a strategy that you're using as a listing agent with your seller, I mean, of course, just like Matt said, make sure that your seller is on board for whatever strategy that you're doing. If it says we're not going to view offers until, you know, Friday at 6 o'clock, you need it in writing from your seller that says we're not looking at them until Friday at 6 o'clock for exactly that reason. Because somebody, you know, Jasmina's got a buyer and she's like, I don't want to mess with this game. I'm going to put my offer in. There's a 24-hour deadline. If you're either going to accept it or not, and we're moving on.
Yeah.
Because they're from out of town or whatever.
Absolutely, it's happened with, you know, even subject to sales where you have like 72-hour excluding weekends. I lost guys from Chicago. It's like, listen, I got to go home tomorrow. I'm going home with the house. This doesn't look like it's going to be this one. Yeah. So I agree. If you guys, you're going to play that strategy, recognize that you might lose somebody with that strategy.
Because you're obligated to present. And when that offer comes in strong and your seller's like, well, do you think it'll appraise for more than that? And you're like, well, we're already at a point where the appraisal's iffy. Yeah. They're like, and it's cash and it's fast and it's good. And they're like, well, let's just do it and be done. Because we're not really going to get something better. Because, you know, burn the hand.
So buyers, whenever they ask you, they'll say, hey, what should we offer for this home? We want it then. We want this house. And they're gonna look for you for guidance on what to offer. And I always tell them, I say, hey, you've got to offer as much as you can to the point that if you find out someone paid a little bit more, you're okay with it. Because you legitimately put your best foot forward. You were not gonna pay any more than that. And they might look at you and say, hey, it's $330,000. What is that? And so only you can determine that, but I think you gotta go strong. There's 3 other offers here. You got to go 342, 345, and show that you're you know, whatever you guys think is best. And then remind them that if we do have an appraisal contingency, and that has to appraise. So if there is a lower appraisal that comes to us, we can renegotiate that point, but lock it down, and remind them of all these other points that are important.
And I was gonna say, how do you explain to, let's say, a buying agent, when you say best and final, that you literally mean best and final, not your almost best and final? Because we've accepted offers and I heard back from the agent said, well, we could have gotten higher, but you didn't. Like they were mad at me for like accepting.
It's happened to me. It actually cost myself $50,000. It was a land piece. 2 offers come in. We go highest and best. They come back with their highest and best. We accept the highest and best.
Yep.
The next day they walk the land, so they made a mistake, want to come up, and they think we accepted 395 and they came back at 450. It was 55 grand. And it was one of our agents, so I felt bad. And I'm like, well, actually, both buyers were with both our agents. So, but I'm like, what did you do that? I mean, and they made me present that offer to the seller.
Was it signed though?
Oh yeah, it was signed by the buyer. So listen, we signed, sealed, and delivered. I just told you the first offer. We got another offer in writing for that much more. I had to present that. So I had to go to the seller and go, I lost you 50 by not waiting. Yeah, that's a tough conversation. Like, anyway, we can take that. Not unless the first buyer's bought. They didn't. They didn't. So
You still presented the,
you have to by law. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Walk away knowing that. If someone writes you an offer, it doesn't matter whether it's signed, sealed, and delivered, you have to present.
But you don't go back a second time and say like, oh, are you sure this is your best and highest? So you don't get in my conversation of we could have had 50K more. Like when you say best final, right? It's best and final.
Yeah, they could have had it for that, for sure. Shoot, they could have had it for 5,000 more than the other offer. They could have had it for 45 less. They just would have came up when they were supposed to.
Well, then that's not your fault though.
It's not my fault.
Yeah.
It's awfully no one's fault, but still, it's bad taste. But the buyer was willing to pay most for it, didn't get it, and the seller could have got 55 grand more, which is a bad taste. You know, so I mean, we're happy they got what they got, but yeah, that's what happens sometimes. So, you know, if you're on the buying side of that, what are you willing to pay that if you find out someone paid just a smidge more, you're okay with it? You know, that second buyer was 450,000 and he never got there. He obviously didn't even get to 395, otherwise on his highest and best. So that's the conversation I have with my buyers, and then I advise them how they're going to get the home. And I usually come aggressive on price. If it's listed 140,000, I'm not doing 142 in closing costs. Get rid of those closing costs if you can. Explain how the tax proration works and how that's going to dig into some of those closing costs. Okay?
And the same goes for commercial. I just lost a deal for 3.5 million because of our time frame for due diligence. And when I told my buyers that, they're like, we don't even care because there's other deals out there. But it's a tough conversation when you're talking $50,000 on up. It sucks to have with your buyers because they're like, our livelihood is gone. What do we do? You know. So I know what you're going through with all of that stuff.
Yeah. You're dealing with a lot of numbers there, 3.5 million.
Yeah.
So, and the due diligence I can see on the commercial piece being a little bit more stringent. You want to know
And we did.
what you're buying there at 3.5 million. It's not bare land. It's a lot of components. I'm assuming you're talking about a multi-family apartment complex or some sort.
Yeah,
That's a lot of kitchens. That's a lot of water heaters. That's a lot of furnaces. That's
And
a lot.
we did 60 days, and the guys that got it were 6 million strong, and then closing 30 days. And we even came with cash and all of that, and we were paying everything.
That's tough to compete with 30 days.
Oh yeah.
Without, you want 2 months worth of due diligence. Yeah, 2 months seems excessive, but something that you wouldn't think 3 to 4 weeks would be excessive.
So, and usually we've done 180 days for due diligence because it's figuring out all the, numbers. And I hate math, and I've grown that I need to be better at it because of how I'm presenting to.
It's commercials, dollars and cents for sure. I'm glad there's part of this is like, listen, every agent you come in contact with, whether it be non-competing offers or whether it be social events or whatever it is, remember you're building relationships with these agents, and being nice, being professional, being on top of your game does matter down the road. And what I'm trying to say is, like, be the agent that you want to deal with when it comes to communication, paperwork, being tight just through the process. When you're on the buying side and there's you and another agent, and that listing agent has a relationship with you to the point they know that you're tight and maybe the other one's not, it does matter. I can tell you personally, as a listing agent that was looking at 3 offers and all 3 of them were the same, highest and best. You know what I encouraged him to go with? It was the agent I knew was a pro. I'm like, this gal's been around a long time. She handles her business. Out of all 3 of these agents, if you're asking me, I want to work with her. And that's who got the house. So just another kind of like thread in there. When everything else is the same, when all the other terms are the same, you try to go with the agent who knows a pro, that knows how to get through negotiations, knows how to deal with hiccups and go and see them before they get here and navigate through them, right? So being nice and having relationships with the other agents, not only within the company, but certainly outside the company, I think is big. I think it's, be the agent that you want to be, you want to work with. All right. If I'm constantly trying to get you for information and I see your Instagram, you're living your best life, but you can't respond to me on where the termite inspection is, or, I've been guilty of this too. I'm not always the best either, but you know what? You know who you're thinking of, and don't be that person. All right. Be that person that's always fun and problems come up. Hey, we're going to attack them together. We're going to figure out a win-win together. You and I can put our heads together and figure out what's best for each of our clients and keep pulling in the same direction. That's the agent I want to work with, right? Not the one that runs from a problem that you can't get a hold of, puts their head in the sand, right?
And take yourself out of it, because, there are people that you'll work with that you're like, I just can't stand them, but they get stuff done. So you have to look at it from your seller point of view, who's going to get it together and get it done, even if you personally, want to slap them upside the head once in a while. But
What's the worst when they don't get stuff done and you don't like them?
well, that's different. That's different, because it's all about getting your seller to the finish line.
Right. And then I'll see a lot of people writing sentimental letters. And it's kind of funny because me and Michelle were talking about this. And when it comes to the VA, great, I would. Someone who served our country and courageously, I think it matters, it does. You're like, hey man, this person just got back. And here's what you can't go though, is, now I've seen letters like this where it's just like, I know you raised your family here and it means so much. We're getting ready to start our family. Family status is a protected class. So although that seems like a great idea, and it is, because I've seen this work where they've actually run into the buyer before somehow. And then so the letter was to reiterate the fact that they knew that they raised their family there for 35 years and they want the same thing. She's pregnant, getting ready to start their family. This is going to be their family home for the next 35 years. And that bonds people together. And sometimes when you get that, because that person has such an emotional attachment, they raise all their kids, their grandbabies, so many Christmases, and they know that next step is coming there, money has a weird effect. Now all of a sudden they're accepting even a lesser offer because they want this family to have the house. So it's a great strategy. However, it has come to my attention that it's illegal.
It can potentially be an equal housing violation, because now you are playing off protected classes and maybe discriminating against a single male buyer in favor of a family. So we can unintentionally be facilitating that, either on the buyer side by encouraging our client to write a letter, or on the seller side by delivering that letter and taking a look at it, and it's all about family, or it has a picture of the family in it and the color of that family is the same color as the seller. All of that plays into it. So, strategy we've used a lot of years.
Yeah.
If you've been in for a while.
From a religious standpoint, we have a cross or sorry, I'm forgetting the name of what the Jewish people wear on the back of their head.
Yeah.
But, or any kind of like bonds you together, like, oh, here's a nice Jewish family, here's a nice Jewish family, or Catholic family, or whatever. Color. Let's go road.
They just order on the table.
Do this. I don't know what you can do about that. I don't know at what point. We have to live under the law of those ethics, right? Your buyer, again, it comes back to encouraging them and telling them what to write. That is something that sounds like it could be a violation. Could be.
Could be.
True as a
Could be.
violation. All right. So just be careful with that. But those letters, if you can find a way to bond with the seller, they do work. They do work if you have that kind of time and you feel like that would be an advantage, somehow.
So maybe it's their dog that loves the fenced yard. You know, pets are not protected.
Yeah, it was clear that she loved her cats, and she had this room that was full of like, it was her cat room, and it was like this big scene, and my buyers, they never had children, they just had cats, and they loved the cat room. And it was a multiple offer, and we wrote a letter about how much they loved the setup of the house, and plan on keeping the cat room there, and yeah.
Where a lot of buyers or a lot of feedback they may have gotten was, oh, the cats.
Right, it was probably more negative.
Mhm.
I'm not a cat person, we small walked in the house if they had cats.
Yeah, and that would be just fine. But it's when you get into those protected classes where we need to be a little careful, step lightly.
Well, and also, you're not gonna win all these offers. Not. Talk to your buyer about being a backup offer. Talk to the listing agent about being a backup offer. Now, if the first offer was to fall through, and sometimes it does, probably a little bit more now than past times, because people are reacting faster. They're having to react faster. So therefore, they feel like once all the emotion calms down, that they might have made a mistake.
I just had last week put 2 properties on the contract. The next morning, both buyers woke up and were like, no.
Yep.
2 properties
It happens.
the same day.
So here's the thing.
God bless you.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
As the backup offer sometimes wins. The backup offer is accepted subject to the first offer becoming null and void, but it never hits the market again. If it's that hot a property, you could even put in there that the second buyer can call it deal null and void before seller lets your buyer know that the first offer became null and void, and now they're in first place. So you can put a contingency in there that buyer, that expires in a week, expires in 3 weeks, expires upon written notice, right? You can just knowing the time frame, just written notice, we're pulling out, or that second offer is there. So if the first offer fails, it never hits the market. You're not in a multiple offer situation again. Okay, so think about that as well. I don't think I see enough of that strategy going on.
We really don't use that enough. And usually what I hear is, oh, why would I want to do that? Well, that's exactly why. I mean, one, it will hold that first buyer, hold their feet to the fire a little bit. If they know when they go through the inspection and they're thinking they're going to send you that, that 6-page spreadsheet, hey, just so you know, we do have a backup offer, in the event that the inspection items can't be negotiated. Not a threat, but it just makes them aware. So from the list side, it'd be great to do that. And then from the buyer side, your buyer can continue to shop and just withdraw that offer anytime before acceptance. So it's really a win-win.
Strategy on both sides. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Any of you that have competed lately, other than Ben with that commercial one, have you guys? I know most of you are somewhat new, so you're probably not out there just writing all over the place. But anything, Davenport, Cedar Rapids, anybody tuning in? Any scenarios you want to talk through where you lost, where we might figure out a way where it could have been a better offer? Any other strategies that have worked that we didn't cover that you'd like to? How's the gallery there?
Very still.
Very still. Do we lose them?
No, it's hard to tell if eyes are open, but yes, they're still there.
I know.
Oh, Kim's waving.
I was
the two Kims.
crushed one time. I had it was a Remax deal too. I presented an offer for some people. The seller countered. We accepted. I got my signatures on it. The listing agent was out of town, so they had someone covering for them. So I delivered the offer. This was during the early stages of Dublin. So they had the offer. They said they couldn't get in front of them at night. They told them, no worries, no one's coming in. None of that. First thing in the morning, I wake up thinking I was going to get this signed offer, and they said someone snuck in there and wrote off and signed off on it. They couldn't sign off on it for my people, but somehow they had time to sign the second offer. And you got to realize that nothing I could have done more to try to get that signed, sealed, and delivered. And I felt like it was kind of a bad thing, you know, but at the end of the day, I always tell the people that lose the house, I kind of, to listen to the universe didn't want me. I said, in my experience, this is the truth, and I have no problem looking people in the face and telling them the truth. The truth is you're gonna find something else, and you're gonna thank me that you didn't buy that house. I said, remember that, because you will, and I'm telling you 100% of the time, they always buy something else and say, you were right. I like this house better than the other one. This one feels better. This one, you know. And that's the thing. Sometimes the universe doesn't give you what you want because it has something else for you. And you got to remind your people that they will find something. If you guys lose out, you will find something, and you'll be glad that that was the something that you got. So try to control the emotion of the buyers that lost a home. They're only going to lose one or two before all the next one. You're going to have an offer like we're getting this, and then all of a sudden they're writing $8,000-$10,000 higher than the list price. They're tired of losing it. So we have the first to know. Obviously, that's something that you guys can get the ground floor on as far as listings that are coming on. Buyers' needs, I believe Davenport, Cedar Rapids has their own first to know. We use that. I can't tell you how many homes and listings and buyers that I've sold this year without competition because I knew they were coming on, or I put my first to know listing out there for you guys, and you guys were able to have the drop on it. Okay, that land piece being one of them. That's why there were two concepts agents that wrote on. So use that for your buyers' needs. Use that for the new listings coming on. We can't share them with the public or other sites, but we can share them internally. Okay.
Can I just circle back to the sharing of information? So, we talked about the seller decides if they're going to share, if there are multiple offers or not. And if that is the strategy that they're using, yes, we're going to share that there are multiple offers coming in. As a buyer's agent, you have the right to ask, with those multiple offers, are you or someone from your firm writing one of those offers? So why is that information that you might want to know?
I can venture a guess.
Okay, jump in, Matt.
There are some companies offer better commission splits if it's sold in-house, right? And they also, obviously, if you're writing your own offer, agents can have a variable rate. Agents are making more. They also have the privilege of seeing your other offers coming in. So although they're supposed to handle it fair and not reveal those to their buyers, the reality is some of them are going to. They're going to tell their buyer, if you want to be the best offer, you got to be here, right? So we want to always act ethical. I never, if I'm writing a dual agency offer and there's multiple offers, my buyer never knows what those other offers are, ever, ever, ever. Play fair, because you'll be on both sides of it, and the more we all play fair, then the more we can expect others to play fair. I tell my buyer the same thing I tell them. Make the offer so that if you find out someone's willing to pay a little bit more, you're okay with it, right?
I had one time, it was my listing night, we were starting negotiating an offer, then I got a signed call, I ended up putting an offer in as well, and they ended up accepting my buyer's offer, and it was because it was a better offer, it was cash, no appraisal, quick close, and the other agent said that he asked where the other offer came from, and I said it was my buyer, and he said that I did it unethically, and he was going to turn me into the commission if it did sell to my buyer, because he thought that I had done something to push my people onto my buyer.
That's what people are going to think every time that you win a dual agency in a multiple offer situation. This is the thing. If you do it ethically and you do it right, then you have nothing to worry about. You cannot control what other people think. That you got to look in the mirror. You're the one that has to look at yourself and say, I handled it right. And then if you do that, then when you're in the situation that they were in, then you can hope that you were treated. I think you get what you give, and I have seen people, I've been on both sides of it, where I thought an agent didn't handle it correctly, and an agent that I know I just lost. Like, I know them, I know they would handle it correctly, I know them as ethical people, I would never question that. So be one of those agents that if you're in this industry long enough, people don't question that. They just know you, that you're gonna handle it the right way.
So in that situation where you're the listing agent and there's more than one offer on the table, do you have to disclose to the other buyer's agents that one of the offers is yours?
If asked,
If asked,
Only if they ask?
only if asked.
you don't have to volunteer.
So he didn't ask until after it was.
Yeah, they've been going back and negotiating, and I think they're negotiating around like stupid stuff like outdoor furniture or
That's-
some shit, and then my people got in there and.
That's why, I think you should call the listing agent and ask if there's any information they could share about the seller. You know, are you writing the offer? Someone from your firm writing the offer, how much time are they gonna give us? You know, if you know that someone else is writing the offer, that other agent's writing the offer, and they're gonna give you till 6 o'clock on Friday, and they really are gonna give you 6 o'clock on Friday, then send it to them at 5:45. Don't give them a chance to really change their offer. You know, do the escalation clause. That she might not like that, or he may not like that, but maybe employ that escalation clause and say, listen, we know that we're doing this because you're writing the other offer. So we're gonna make it, we either want this house or we're gonna make your buyer pay for it.
Yeah.
You know?
Variable rate too, when you do see that there's a variable rate, you can ask what the variable is and they have to tell you what that percentage is. So that way it makes it a fair playing field for your buyer. Because variable rate is only legal if it's disclosed. And if it's disclosed, you can ask what it is and they have to tell you.
And if you are offering a variable rate, I'll put something in there that says that if there's multiple offers, the variable rate goes away. Generally, what that does is, you know, if I'm doing that, that's what I say. So list it for this, if I bring the buyer, we can do it for this, unless there's multiple offers. I tell them it's unethical for the other buyer to be negotiating from a different plane. I said, the good news is you're probably getting what you're asking or more, so it ends up being a win for everybody. They're like, yeah, I can see that. That's usually no one's ever given me any pushback on that. Then I don't ever have to question, I don't ever have to disclose that it's a variable rate, nor does it come into play if there's multiple offers. It's you know, my buyer can win on the merit of them being the best buyer.
I have never once on seen that it is variable rate.
I'm seeing it more now.
Okay.
I'm seeing it a lot more. I think there have probably been some complaints and so now we're seeing it more.
Anybody ever write on their own listing with multiple offers and lost? I have. I've been mad. I told you. But you must have told her. If you're mad at that, if you're mad someone paid more for it, then you didn't listen to my advice. You know?
And as you're new, one other note I have in here, because we talked about clean offers, make sure your paperwork is complete. So not only do you have that purchase agreement, every line is filled in, you know, you've got percentage rates in there. It doesn't say best rate for, you know, for percentage rate. You're not skipping lines. You've got the seller property disclosure signed back. You've got lead-based paint signed back. Ben dealt with that one, not getting signed back right away. Whatever that paperwork is, have everything clean and neat and turned in.
Seller's disclosure, lead-based paint, pre-approval, you know, all those things.
Yeah, seller property disclosure, if you're not aware, as a buyer's agent, you know, we always want to have that seller property disclosure signed back at the very beginning. As a listing agent, you really need to have that with the purchase agreement. Because if you don't, you have no proof that the buyer has reviewed it and accepted it. And because you don't have that proof, that gives the buyer 3 days to get out of that deal from the time they do receive the seller property disclosure. So if you're a listing agent, you're like, yeah, I didn't get the property disclosure done, and now all these offers are coming in, and you help your seller to accept an offer, that's not even really an offer because that buyer has 3 days to walk away with no consequences for any reason whatsoever.
So they have 3 days to review if they don't have it at the time when they submitted their initial offer.
When
Once they get it.
once their offer is accepted.
Okay,
So they could submit and then get it,
okay,
but it needs to be signed back. So
within those 3 days after.
no, it before the time of acceptance, as long as it's signed back, that's it.
Okay.
So as a listing agent, you have to have that with it. But if it's after,
Then it's a 3 days.
they could have 3 days from what's deemed the time of delivery.
Yeah,
So
the time
just-
of receipt of it.
Right.
So it takes 3 days for you to get seller's exposure to buyer, there's another 3 days.
Yeah, now they've got
after.
another 3 days to review it and decide what they want to do.
Okay.
And just putting it on the MLS is not enough. The real estate commission says it has to be signed back.
What if it was on the MLS and the buying agent never sent it with the contract?
Nope,
So
doesn't count.
technically it still counts. 'cause
Doesn't count.
But it was given to them.
It was put on the MLS. You don't know that it was given to them. The only way you can prove it is signed back.
Just given the buyer's agent doesn't mean it's given to the buyer.
So, but I can't reach out directly to the buyer.
That's why having the seller's disclosure signed lead-based claim
Yeah.
is part of having the signed
Yeah.
sealed offer. Without it, there's a 3-day right of rescission.
Yeah.
Is what they're calling it.
Okay.
Which I didn't know until today.
From time of delivery. I know, it's
So-
one of those
so-
little
Which is
things.
good because that's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
There's approved offers sending over
Yeah.
the base payment.
Now, generally, if I have a buyer that the seller disclosure isn't there, I would usually make it subject to, reviewing, accepting, and signing sellers within 72 hours or something. So
Which
I-
you don't even have to put in
Yeah,
there because you've
yeah,
got that
I do.
right.
Right, so, yeah.
It does put the listing agent on notice because lots of listing agents don't realize that.
And a lot of this too, when you're working with your buyers in this climate that we're in, low inventory, let them know let them know what's going on. Let them know that if you really like a house and you're rating it 8 or higher, be prepared to pay what they're asking or more. If they're not, they'll learn. They may think it's a sales trick at first. They may think, oh no, they're just trying to, and then they'll get burnt on losing a house, and then they'll see what you're telling them is actually real. And then they'll start making better offers. I think everybody walks into the market thinking they can just get a little bit off, and a lot of the times in the markets we're in now, that's not happening. I've talked with appraisers, and they're seeing inflation of pricing to the point that they're having troubles keeping up with it with other comparables. Sometimes $10,000, $12,000 more than the last house that sold that was like that. So we kind of got through this pretty quick, a lot quicker than I thought.
We went through really quick. The other update, and the DMAR purchase agreement was updated. I know other purchase agreements, Cedar Rapids has it. I think the Quad Cities one does as well, is when that offer is presented to the seller, they do have to sign back the rejection. So as a listing agent, you have to take the time with your seller to have them sign it back. You can't just call and say, here's what the offer is, and then reject it to the buying agent. And that's also kind of a way to make sure that everything's being presented. And so that's why that was added to it. No problem. Yep, thank you for the rejection. I do need to get that signed back. And so, it's right on the purchase agreement. They're required to do it. And if it's not signed back, they can't prove it was presented.
I've never had one signed
Neither.
after it was rejected.
Well, the DMAR purchase agreement, we've only been using it for less than a year, and it takes a long time for everybody to get on board with stuff. But I don't think it was on most purchase agreements before.
It wasn't. Well, no, I don't think it was on ours either.
I think that's why it was added, because of the frustration of multiple offers and people making complaints that say, hey, I don't think my offer was presented. Well, now you can prove it. And that's another way to be a good listing agent. Yep, I presented it. Here's the signature. Here you go. So.
Yeah, be the agent you guys want to, you want to work with. Okay, that comes down to just being communication, understanding that, stuff's gonna happen, right? You're gonna be a listing agent and the other side is gonna blow up. Be an adult, be mature about it. There's a lot of good faith operating in these transactions. We're all trying to pull the same way. You're being on it with it. You'll see the signs of a buyer not being able to perform. It happens. It's not always the buyer's agent's fault. Sometimes it's not the lender's fault. Sometimes it's not even the buyer's fault. stuff happens, bad stuff happens, stuff goes sideways. Be an adult, be emotionally mature about it. You can put your head in the pillow and scream because it sucks. All the way around it sucks. Every party involved, it sucks. But if you handle it the right way, that other agent's gonna walk away like, man, that's a pro. That's a professional. Someone who's been through this enough to not freak out because something went. They understand it's part of what we do, unfortunately. And the good thing is, though, that if you're really good at your job, your bond percentage should be really low. It should be probably around 2 to 4%. That's it. With 100 transactions, you should have 2 to 4 bombs a year. If you have more than that, something's not right in your process. Okay? Now, the industry-wide, it's more than that. It's like 1 out of 5. And last we checked, that was probably coming up on a year ago, but that was almost 20% of them were bombing. That is way too high of a number. You know, stuff like COVID, you can't control if your person is let go or put on furlough. That's nothing you can do. But other things that you can, you jumping in too fast, not setting the table. There's things that you can do to help keep these deals together. Most of them should go through. I keep track of all my sales and my bombs every year, and I'm trying to hover around that 2%. I don't want to have more than a couple bombs a year. Okay.
It's not time effective. If you think about it, all the time you spend trying, with those deals that are falling apart, that's not a good use of your time.
And you lose one house with a buyer for multiple offers, they learn. You lose a second house, now they're ready to fire something away. You lose a third, they're going to start questioning your ability as an agent. So start coaching them about the market right from the get-go. Guys, if this home's less than 21 days on the market, we're paying probably what they're asking, maybe more, might be multiple offers on it. If it's 1 or 2 days in the market, it's got to be super clean, right? So, coach your buyer. They don't know. This is the first time they're doing this. You're in this for a long haul. You'll see actually periods of seller's market, buyer market. It's even. It's back. You got to coach your people on what's going on, so they're prepared to make offers that win. Okay.
From a paperwork standpoint too, I know you guys all know that you have to keep all of your transactions for 5 years legally. You also have to keep even unaccepted offers, which may be a surprise. But if you're doing dot loop, they live in there anyway. But that's been a big surprise for a lot of agents too, because if you're a paper agent, you just want to put it in the shredder and light it on fire. So, but you do have to keep it for 5 years.
Yeah. And by the way, if someone bombed on you for one reason and you end up selling them a home later in the year, that's still a win. It doesn't count if you can come together on an inspection and you still sell them something else. What really counts is you didn't do enough due diligence to realize this person, or your lender that you sent them to didn't know that their debt to income ratio, and they came, or something like that. Or you did something during the transaction where they soured on you. Now they're buying a home, they're not using you. That's bomb. All right, in the worst way. So sorry we didn't take up all 2 hours a day. Sure you're okay.
Questions, ideas?
We started at 9, by the way.
Something that you've come across that is particularly frustrating. What? Bad agents are particularly frustrating. Invite them to our law update and ethics. We talk about all of this.
No, I just passed it off to you last week.
Oh.
Like, I can't do this anymore. You take this over for me. It was the most combative 10 days I've ever had with an agent, and got to the point where I'm
going to give you guys a little game I play. Is find the person that's in the bad mood and see if you can cheer them up. This comes down to you're dealing with people like clerks and department store people or agents, okay? If you find someone's kind of sour, see if you can do the Jedi mind trick and try to actually manipulate people. That's what I try to do. I try to tell them, I saw a guy the other day, he was in a bad mood, he was trying to usher everybody around, and when I had a moment, I went up there and I said, how nice is Tyler? And I Tyler sharp. You immediately all of a sudden you can see kind of spread up a little bit. He's like, thank you. Tell his whole demeanor change. And then all of a sudden he didn't have a table for us at first, now all of a sudden he's finding the table. You can manipulate people and do what you want. Same thing with agents. If all of a sudden they're giving you back and say, hey, I can hear this in your voice, and I don't want it to be that way. And if there's a problem here, I don't know what the solution is, but I know if you and I work together, we'll find it. Okay? We'll work it out, you and I. Bring them into the problem so you can't flip the script on them, so to speak. And then see if their demeanor changes. If someone pushes and you push back with opposing force, which is your immediate reaction, that's just everybody's reaction, then that's going to continue until someone's will gives. But if you pull them into your light instead of letting them dwell in whatever shit they're dwelling in, you can change them. You can change their whole strategy. You can get the table, even though you just got there and 5 of the people in front of you are pissed off now, because you complimented someone's earrings. A woman said something about, man, those are awesome shoes. Where'd you get those? Cheer somebody up. Change their mood.
I don't know that I'd use the word manipulate, but.
It is manipulate. I mean, the book I read it from is how to manipulate people and get your way. So it is. And I know manipulation is a bad word, but
Yeah.
we're trying to get what we want, and trying to figure out what makes people tick. And
We're more manipulating the scenario, not so much the person.
true.
I mean, if you look at it that way.
Yeah. You are. Your people love affirmation that they're doing things well. And I remember we were at a waitress and she was working her butt off, obviously short-staffed. You can tell she's frustrated and because she's not getting the type of service she's used to. And she comes over, she's apologizing. I said, hey, don't worry about it. You're working. I can tell you're working your butt off. We're not needy. Don't worry about us. And I can tell that really went a long way with how all of a sudden we were getting more attention. I told her I didn't need it. All of a sudden, making her feel like we acknowledge that we see that you're not just sitting on your butt, you're working your butt off. You can change people's demeanor by acknowledging what they're doing is meaningful, by acknowledging terror, that type of thing. So.
But that's hard to do when you only speak to them on the phone. It's not like, your hair looks good today, but I can't see you.
Your pronunciation is on key.
Figure something out. Hopefully you're being cheerful on the phone, but if you're feeling them not, figure out what the problem is and say, hey, I feel this and I want to, maybe you're arguing over an inspection issue. And you see, or maybe you're putting an offer and they're not giving you the time and say, hey, listen, I recognize you're really busy. Is there anything I can do to help you out? Do I need to run paperwork to your seller? I'll be glad to do it. Just tell me what you need me to do to make our lives easier. I'm in this to win this with you. Now all of a sudden you brought them in, you brought yourself into their problems that you can help them with. And they may not want you to go see their seller. That might not be it. But the fact that you just let them know that, hey, I'm willing to do something to help you. I know you're running around and you sound like you're just, you're going crazy. What can I do to help? Can I run that paperwork to your seller? I'd like to get this offer signed and sealed delivered.
I got a question.
Oh, go ahead.
So how, you put the times on offer, response by 10:30, response by 7:30, things like that. How motivated is the listing agent if you're on the buying side? Because I feel like we finally came to an agreement and he put he put an 11 o'clock on it. This was the other night. And it was 10:30, 10:45 and just absolute silence. We had done everything on our end and it was still absolute silence. And I was just and so finally I called, it was Roberts.
Right out of the chute.
It was Roberts or whatever.
Yeah.
And so then I called him and he answered. He was super cheerful. He was like, thanks for all your hard work. His house is on the market. Went and I still would have just been staring at my phone. I still would have had no idea.
Yeah, your deadline doesn't mean it's.
Let me put that qualifier. This is why it mattered. Hang on, because why it mattered was there was an initial field that she couldn't click, and so we couldn't get a complete signed document because she couldn't click this one last thing. And so I needed him to move it, and I couldn't get a hold of him. And it was 10:45, and it's so I just wondered if that would have been past 11, what world I would have been in.
This is 11 p.m.
Yeah.
Good night.
I'm already in bed for 2 hours.
No, you're making it happen, man.
Yeah.
So if it goes past 11 p.m., you're gonna want to cross that part out and put in.
That's another thing is I had my 7:30 in there,
and then just initial next to it.
The time frame.
That's the one thing I
It
have
would've been
about
avoidable.
those expirations is
Right.
if you don't meet them, it actually becomes a voidable contract. It doesn't mean the contract is void. It means it is voidable, which means if two people want to go down that road, you know, and fulfill the contract, you don't need a change there. But at any point, if someone wants to say,
well, this was supposed to be accepted by 7:30, we didn't come together until 10:30.
then have to just cross that out.
Yeah.
Put
And we
initials
did.
by it.
Kenny got me back, he's like, make sure the initials and change the time, and that was another point I was gonna make, because I didn't know that, you know,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, as long as both parties are moving forward, that contract is still valid and in play.
Yeah, the thing was that she couldn't sign it, and that was the qualifying feature, made it like anxiety, but she can't sign it, and he's the only one that can help me. So what I did is I actually put an initial box in there, even though it was like line 127, I got the initial box on like line 125. And she initialed it, and he was cool with it, I didn't know like,
That'd be fine.
the formality of that yet, because it's the first time it's ever happened.
It's all good.
You got it done though, right?
Yeah.
Congrats.
Yeah.
As long as nobody else came in with another better offer in the meantime while you were struggling with it.
Sure, yes.
That's what you're worried about.
That's
Yeah.
That's what you're worried about.
Because it was, it was,
Otherwise, there's no, time is not of the essence.
it went on the market while we were out looking.
Yeah.
Like it was a 3-minute on the market for 3 minutes while we were out looking.
The worst is when you have that listing for, like, you see that listing's been on for 6 months, and as soon as you write an offer, there's 2 other offers. And you're like, you gotta be shitting me,
Yeah.
it's been sitting here for this long, and then you almost call BS, and they're like, no, I
Right.
swear to God,
Yeah.
swear to God, I wouldn't, you know, then you believe the agent, because they're just telling you, like, I can't believe it either, we've been sitting here with nothing, and we reduced it, now we got 3 offers, you know? It happens, I've been on the listing side of that, it's like, you're not gonna believe me when I say this, because it's been sitting here forever, but we have multiple offers.
Well, and when there's a slower market, you know, and things set like that, usually what happens is you've got an offer coming in, you may have another agent who has said, hey, if you hear that somebody's gonna write an offer, could you just let me know? And then that's what pushes their buyer to write an offer, and then you end up in that
We
situation.
used to do this face to face, so we have to go to the seller, and we wait for the other agent to come out. You have one agent come, and you know, where do you want to be? You want to be first, you want to be last? I always want to be last. You know, but you need to go in there and present your offer, and you could tell the seller a little bit about the buyer at that point. We weren't worried about protected classes, I guess.
Currently not.
She's pregnant, she's married, you know, or sometimes you would use the opposite. She's a single mother. It's a single mother. You just would try to find, you know, I try to find any commonality. Dogs, Cubs fan, whatever it was, man. I still do. I try to find, when I'm working with people, I try to find commonalities that we can, like fish, golf, whatever you like to do, you know, try to find some commonality with. Makes you more memorable.
And you can still present in person.
You can ask, but the listing agent does not need to allow you to do that. No.
We do it like.
Actually, it's the seller who decides.
Seller decides. The
Seller decides.
listing agent, your game. Yeah. I would love to see how some of you would do going to the house and the seller, sit down. I would do fun to.
We should do
I've been
that.
kicked out
We
of
should do
people's
that.
houses before.
Yeah.
Actually, the second offer I ever wrote, Marion Hansel. Marion Hansel was in the big ponytail.
Mm-hmm. I like
She just
Marion.
sat there and laughed at me. Yeah, south side, back here. You come in late at night, yeah. Yeah. I always got nervous getting to people's houses and sitting down. Then you get used to it. That's the way you did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
They
and you
had
sat and
coffee.
talked to agents then.
They had
and
carbon
built-
copies, paper, so you
Yeah.
can sign everything, and everybody get a copy and sign so whoever. Dotwood has made it this industry better, but it's also made it sloppy.
Mhm.
You know,
Less personal.
and well, I think like we go over the highlights of the offer, like it's the Sports Center top 10. We're not preparing our sellers to leave. You know, I heard this from an agent, another agent, different company down the street from me. They sold this house and they buyers got to the house and they removed all the cabinetry from the garage. These guys are moving out of state, so they're halfway across the nation. It's like, it's in the purchase agreement that everything stays that's attached. It's light fixtures, right? Windows, doors. So if you go through that with your seller as a listing agent and with, you know, the buyer, you're able to go through that. Less chance of things going wrong. You know, less chance of getting to the walkthrough and like, what happened to the cabinets, or why is this light? That's not the light fixture that was there. Oh yeah, well, we replaced it with stock Bernard ceiling mounts with our beautiful light we didn't want to leave.
Right.
Yeah, you're like, what do you mean? You know, you just took a $350 light fixture out for a $20 one? You know, that seller has no idea because the listing agent didn't prep them through the offer. We just went over price, financing, inspection time, what's being left, closing date, sign here. There's more to that offer than that. Holding insurance on the property up and through closing. I tell my sellers, do not cancel your insurance until I give you your check. Then you can cancel your insurance, not a minute. Don't set that up pre in case there's a delay and then there's no insurance for a week and something happens.
I have a question of like, so as a new agent, when like, if I submit a purchase, so I submitted the purchase agreement, let's say like there was an error on it and he was understanding and I submitted another, like, what do I need to be aware of? It's like, just like firing purchase agreements and something like that doesn't happen, but like, say like you get excited and you make an error and like, God forbid you make another error. Like now you're sending like, what would I need to be aware of if I ever got in a situation like that where I need to like hold up?
Looking like an idiot.
Yeah. Hasn't happened, but like I can see how it would happen, right? Let's say the price was
I'm
wrong.
starting to doubt your mental capacity.
Yeah. Like let's say like the price was wrong on the first one, they shot it off, got excited, and didn't notice that there was missing a zero or something. Boom, and then like something else, like
To
something.
your buyer, to the seller, to listing.
To the listing agent. Like, is there something I need to be aware of? Is like now he has all these different purchase agreements. Is what I'm saying.
No, it's still signed, still delivered, it's not legally binding. And if you missed a zero, hopefully you missed, you shorted one, not
I hope it won't
not
happen.
paying 14 million instead of, 140,000.
Exactly. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I would, hopefully you're not doing that a lot. Calm down.
No, it hasn't happened at all. I'm just saying, like, it can happen.
Double check your work, yeah, because you do go fast, time is the essence, but
Yeah.
review it really quick. Make sure you send it off. If you do get it wrong, correct it, but make sure it doesn't go wrong the second time.
I guess my question was more like, you have the wrong agent, like how this guy's like, oh, really?
There are some agents that are gonna look at you that would probably say, what are you, kind of paint chips you need,
Right.
but we all make mistakes too. So if you're on the other end of that,
I also learned when I just started that people will kind of help and guide you too. Like
Yeah.
the first couple transactions, because you're kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just typing random stuff and we'll see what happens. But I remember my first couple, like whoever I worked with was like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. This is how we're gonna. But
Yeah. Thankfully, I had
Yeah,
someone
it-
do that with me too.
yeah.
like you're sweating bullets and you hit send on an offer.
Like they even helped me do that earnest money. Now that's, that's super easy. So,
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to put myself in your guys' shoes again. It's been so long since I was new, but yeah, I can see you being nervous. Like, God, am I doing this right? Is everything, right? And that's what we're here for, though, too. Call us. I'll review your purchase agreement before you send it off if you have the time. I have the time, but if you have that window of time to get me the purchase agreement to review it so it's right, I'll be happy to do that for you guys.
Yeah, be gracious with each other. I mean, really, that's it. Mistakes happen, be gracious. If people have kids screaming at home now, working from home because school, who knows what's going on with school these days with COVID, just be gracious with one another. And, don't, when you get to have the number of years that somebody like Matt has, be that mentor rather than being you're new, aren't you,
yeah,
sweetie?
you must be new here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
I
there
don't
is.
do new construction very much, too.
It just like
Oh,
Yes.
Isn't
Or
that
when
something?
when you are dealing with someone who's a newer agent, like to give them grace and be coaching them and helpful because there's
But not patronizing. There's that line of like,
Yes.
Condescending.
yes,
Yeah.
like,
Right, yes.
I know you're new, I will help, but I'm not gonna sit here and
Yeah.
tell you what, like.
I had a agent that had me in tears, and my husband came. I was like doing the ugly cry in the bathroom. I'm like, I don't know if I can do this.
Shane?
And no. She, instead of helping me, like through a little mistake I made, she went to DNL, like over my head, and I just felt so like
Small.
yeah, it was awful. It was like the worst experience I had doing this. So
Well,
far.
remember how that made you feel, because someday you're gonna be in that person's
absolutely,
shoes.
yes.
And someone will be in your shoes.
Yeah.
And recognize that, listen, we all don't have it. There's 70% of the people fall out of this business in 3 or 4 years. I don't say that to scare you. I just say that it's not easy. And, on a personal, I'm getting away from this training thing. Like, if you're not working your sphere of influence, you're not connecting with people and building relationships, you're not going to be here in 4 years because the market's going to turn. And a lot of you are benefiting from a lot of leads coming in online, a lot of overflow that big agents like a Danielle can't capture everything. So there's crumbs for the rest of us, and they're not going to be there, right? But seriously, they're not going to be there.
Super low interest rates.
Yes, there's a lot of things to do on the market. It will turn. And the relationships that you have, knowing how to maintain them and build upon them, will be the difference of whether you're around and survive 3 to 4 years and maintain your lifestyle and not looking for other things. The leads will dry up. The sign calls will dry up. New construction will dry up, become too expensive to build. And you're going to start to see it slowly coming more inventory. As you start to see the inventory rise, you know the tide's turning. And those interest rates jump up to 4.5% in the next 2 years, and everybody's locked in at a 2.75 interest rate, and everybody's refinancing at a 2. What do you think that will do? You know, you're going to go away from the people that want to move. Now we're going to be dealing with people that need to move. And there will always be people that need to move. Divorce, marriage, families, death, sickness, different change of lifestyles, relocation. There's always reasons to move. It'll be those relationships that get you in connection with those need to moves that will help. And those people that aren't working their sphere, those people that aren't building relationships, we're going to lose you. And I'm going to be sad. It'll hurt me to see to lose you guys. But that's why I tell you now, because the time to build those relationships and foster those relationships is now, not when it turns. Like then it's too late. You haven't established yourself that way. It's now. Or Lance had a saying the other week. I wish I could remember it, because it was really cool. It was like, God, that was a nice saying to get him. Maybe if I could get him on a video recording for you guys. But it was to that effect, where like start now, coming up with a way to touch your database and build relationships. I don't care if you're part of a team and they're feeding you stuff. Like that's great. Start working on your own business and bring your own business to the team. Okay. It's Katie, right? Mm-hmm. You as well. I mean, start working that. You're not too young. Don't let me tell you that shit. You're not. The only difference between you and being successful is the knowledge you need to do it. So keep coming to these classes, keep absorbing, keep coming to Michelle's classes, pump you full of knowledge. Your age won't matter anymore once you know what you're doing. Then it's about building relationships and being that high quality, high character person that your friends and your sphere is going to turn to when they have real estate needs. All right? It will happen. You just gotta work it. You gotta come up with a blueprint, which we have. It's very tangible. You can make it your own. It's not a rigid thing, or you can follow it to the letter and you'll have the same success we all had. Right? That's building probably 40 sales a year you can rely on through referrals alone. Okay, so you can build a 6-figure income just with referrals. Now, if you can do open houses, work online leads, do networking events, call sell value, all the things in your, just want to start making more money, but that's your base, that's your foundation. Okay, guys, 70% of them aren't going to do it. 70% of them are going to fall out. Look in the mirror and just say, is that going to be you or not? If you say it's not, then it won't. You'll do what's necessary. Okay? If you're scared, that's okay, because the fear of loss always trumps the fear of gain. People that do well, that grind like a Jenny Farrell or Danielle, they know what it's like to not make money. They know what it's like to get in the downturn. So they're always working and hustling like the end of the world is around the corner. Like, off to Jenny Farrell, she's been thinking the market's fallen in for the last 5 years. So she works like literally the market's in a cave. And that's the way she works. That fear of loss, that fear of outweighs her fear of gain. She's not looking to buy a car or a new house. It's always, this fear. Am I going to be able to do what I did last year? Right? Anything you guys want to talk about before we break? Anything even outside of this? Anything you want to discuss? Anything troubling? Anything? Give me some positive news. Anything? Where's your rentals? I feel like I didn't get the rest of it.
I drove back from the lake, so I only could get my drink that I had earlier. So I didn't get here. I was running. I was running late. I'm glad I made it.
usually on the second one by now.
I know, I gotta stop right after this. You wanna go to lunch? Again?
September.
So, I
Or
didn't
you
get
do like
it.
that.
If I had two
Already
Red Bulls,
like
I would be doing cartwheel.
I have one.
All right, I'm gonna stop recording. Thanks for coming, Jennifer, Cindy, Kim and Kim.
Music playing.
Good to
I
see
got
you
the
guys.
TV going. I got the computer. I'm like, oh, it works. Thank you, man.
You're welcome. Remember, to build relationships.
All right, so I will share with you.
Now you can turn it off. Nice when they get over early. Oh, how you doing? I see that. I was gonna go to Dave here and then I'll pick you guys are 21 there. Okay, scroll.